Welcome to tonight's commission meeting. I would need a motion to adjourn from
Make a motion
executive
to
session.
adjourn from executive session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Next is the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes from the March 7, 2023 regular commission meeting.
Resolution number R-49-23.
A resolution appointing Mary Tolman to the Tree Committee.
Resolution number R-50-23.
A resolution appointing Randy Simon Siri to the Tree Committee.
Resolution number R-51-23.
A resolution appointing Richard Jean Hill to the Golf Advisory Board.
And resolution number R-52-23.
A resolution appointing Michael Moore to the Golf Advisory Board.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I will remind everyone that all of these folks who have volunteered to the Tree Committee and Golf Advisory Board, we appreciate their volunteerism, their participation, their dedication. Each of these have a 4-year term, and we look for great things from these committees. Moving to old business, ordinance number 0-1-23.
An ordinance establishing the manner in which ordinances will be available for public inspection.
Second reading?
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, this is the second reading on this ordinance, and if you'll recall from the last meeting, we discussed that this would establish the publication of ordinances and resolutions passed by the Commission as the official publication to the City of Piqua website. We discussed the fact that the local newspaper is only going to be published twice per week, which limits the amount of time and the timeliness of getting those things published for the public to see. We currently publish that information through the city's website and our social media as well. So this would just be making that process the official process.
Okay. Are there any comments from commission? Any comments from our citizens? Okay. We will move on to ordinance number O-2-23, first reading.
An ordinance to repeal Title 15, Land Usage of the Code of Ordinances, and adopt Title 15, Development Code, in association with the Code Piqua project.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you. This is actually an item that's been in the works for several years since we launched the effort, and it really originates from the comprehensive plan update in 2007, where it identified the need to update our development standards. What has occurred since then is a very comprehensive review and look-see at all of the land use chapter, everything from the subdivision regulations on through to the zoning code. And the result is a document that is forward-looking and utilizing current best practices as opposed to some of the standards that we had previously that were quite dated. So this is way past due, and it's exciting that we've advanced it to this point. This would be the first reading in the adoption process, and I've asked Kirsten French to join us this evening and provide the staff report. As you know, Kirsten is our city planner, and Kirsten has been very instrumental in helping pull all this together and really bring it to this point. So a big thank you to her for her effort, and I'll ask Kirsten to make a comment.
Good evening. I think that about covered it.
but I actually have, Melissa, I put Exhibit A, it's sitting here, so that's kind of what it all looks like printed out. This development code has been on the website for several months now, available for public comment. Also, on our GeoPiqua page on the development maps and on the Code Piqua project page, there are links to GIS maps that show everybody's new zoning district, and that's been available to look at for a few months as well. I just wanted to highlight a few things that have come up as far as questions and just things that are in there that you have spoken about recently and wanted to make sure that you were aware of. So aside from the text of the development code, which like Chris said, includes all of the zoning information, subdivision code, our floodplain regulations, our historic preservation standards, all wrapped up into one unified development code. There's also a few sub-things to look at. So right in the beginning of the code, we adopt in other codes, which includes the Ohio Residential Code and the Ohio Building Code. It includes an update to the International Property Maintenance Code 2021 version. Previously, we were operating on the 2003 version, so it's time to come up to current code with that. Not a lot of substantive changes there, but certain helpful subjects have been brushed up over time. There is a new fee schedule that's listed within this, and I wanted to make sure we touched based on that because you recently passed a fee schedule update for our zoning permits last year, and what this is doing is aligning with some of the categories that are involved with the development code draft. We wanted to put in some subsections for minor work. So instead of things all being, it's a residential permit, so it's one fee for all residential projects, whether you're building a new house or building a garage or building a shed. We want to make sure that the fees reflect the actual review time it takes. So a shed costs less than building a new house, for example. I'm really excited about what's going on in this code. I think it's really answering to what a lot of our planning documents have asked for, but even more than that, since this project has taken quite a while, it has reflected many conversations one-on-one with the community members I've spoken to, with developers I've spoken to, and of course, in consultation with our consultants from Code Studio. Staff recommends approval of this request, and just to give you some, what are the next steps? This is our first reading. We've got 2 more readings, and then on April 18th, it's possible for the City Commission to vote on this request. On April 19th, we would accept for the first time development permit applications for review under this new code, but for that first month, it is an option for anybody to continue to operate under the former code until the effective date of this new code, which is May 18th. So if anyone's looking for that schedule of how things are going to play out for adoption, that is also located on the project page and within this staff report.
I just have to say, I can remember, and this is all pre-COVID, gathering up in the Fort Piqua Plaza for one of the first meetings on this, and it feels like this has taken, and I know for you all as well, forever to get this together. And then, of course, COVID came and whatever, but I'm glad that we're finally to the place that we're moving forward with this, and I think it will definitely help our city as we move forward. So thank you for all your good work on it.
Any other comments from commission? Any comments from our citizens?
Good evening, Commissioners. Joshua Blackshire for Sherry Development, 1301 Spruce Street in Troy. So I hope I don't turn this into a circus. My grandfather passed away Saturday. Had to drive back from Illinois today. Forgot to pack my clown suit. So, Mike Sherry was in here when you guys did the joint session, February 14th, and he addressed some issues with this new code. Overall, we support it. I don't want anybody to think here that we're trying to stop this code from going into effect. It looks great. I think it's awesome. The only issue that we have is the high impact uses that are still listed in this code in the draft. And I know it was addressed at the Planning Commission meeting last week about trying to get it dropped. They basically, the talk was, let's go ahead and just pass it as it is, and then we'll amend it. And we don't like that idea, because every time we've kicked the can down the road, it backfires. It never gets done. Then we end up with a rock quarry that puts an application in, and they don't go before you guys to vote this rock quarry into effect. They go before the Planning Commission, unelected group of volunteers, and I appreciate their service, don't get me wrong. But the Planning Commission's basically just looking at our procedures followed, and they don't really, there's no obligation from them to take the voice of the people into their considerations. They look at it, they weigh it, they decide, hey, maybe this would be good for Piqua, despite the fact that people don't want it. And so that's what we're asking for, is let's change that high impact use part. And I've noticed that we've already done that with marijuana cultivators and mobile home parks, where you can explicitly state we are prohibiting high impact uses within the city limits. And I understand this has been a 4-year process, and you guys want to get it passed and be done with it, and I would too. Don't get me wrong, but I think and I don't even know if you have to delay the process to have them make those changes, or if that can be done during this 3-reading deal. But if not, what's a couple more weeks to say, hey, we'll pass this, but we just want you to add that language in there to stop the high impact uses. So that's all I've got.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate your comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? So we will have the second reading then April 4th. Ordinance number O-3-23, first reading.
An ordinance to adopt revisions of Chapter 90 animals to permit backyard chickens.
Okay. So this has started here in the city commission, I think, and there's been a certain amount of public will for the consideration of backyard chickens.
Yep.
And we drafted some standards, took them before the Planning Commission 2 months ago. Planning Commission asked for some significant revisions, so we took another month, made those revisions, and that's what you see before you today. I think, just based on how the conversation went last time, people are going to ask a lot of these questions anyway, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to go through what some of these standards are. So what this is referencing is residential properties that are under 5 acres, because currently you can have chickens if you're on a lot that's over 5 acres. No roosters, that's still a prohibition. So if you were on a residential lot under 5 acres, you could have up to 6 chickens in your backyard. That's part of what the draft is saying. No roosters may be kept on the property. No slaughter of chickens may take place on the property. Prior to keeping chickens or constructing any structure, a permit must be obtained from the development director. The property has to have the minimum dimensions that are listed in the rest of this code in order to have chickens. So you have to meet all these other standards. Chickens have to be provided with an elevated covered chicken coop, an attached chicken run, and the chickens have to be kept in this enclosure. The construction of the enclosure has to protect chickens from the elements and from predators. The enclosure has to meet the following, and I'll try to just be brief summarizing. They must be in the rear yard only, 10 feet from any property line, and no closer than 30 feet from any adjacent residential structure. So that's a measurement from the coop to a nearby structure, not to any property line. The enclosures have to meet all of their siting standards for accessory structures. Can't be within a riparian buffer or a riparian setback. Those are terms that come from the new development code, but should that not pass, that just means within 100 feet of the bank slope of a stream or designated body of water. They can't be located within 50 feet of an 50 feet of an active drinking well. You gotta have 4 square feet per chicken, so we're trying to address animal welfare through that. The coop has to be elevated, it has to be, it can't exceed 8 feet in height, must be secured with a hard wire mesh or similar siding, so that's even stronger than chicken wire, and what that does is keep raccoons and other predators out of the coop. Has to be secured so that little raccoon hands can't open things up, kind of thing. So there are ways you can protect doors from that. The coops have to have an egg laying station, so you can collect the eggs every day, and they have to be enclosed. Sorry, I'll skip one. That's another predator-proof latch. Has to have a solid visual barrier, so either an opaque privacy fence, so can't see through that, and mature landscape screening, or you'd have to plant your landscape screening to meet that requirement. And it can't be visible from the ground level of a right-of-way or adjacent property. So there's a lot of standards in here. That's part of what I'm trying to get to. Enclosures have to be cleaned once every 7 days. And it goes on from there about how you clean, what needs to be done with the waste, and that the development department is allowed to inspect the enclosure as much as once a year. We're not obligated to, but we would, basically how that program would work is somebody would apply for a zoning permit. We'd say, okay, here are your dimension, and let's see your site plan just like any other development permit. Then you would construct your coop to the standards listed here. Somebody would go out and inspect the coop, and then after that point, you're okay to buy your chickens. So that's how that program would essentially run as drafted here. And then if we're receiving complaints, that's another inspection point. We're allowed to come inspect if we're receiving a lot of written complaints about what's going on with the coop, and it could be a typical CVN to enforce code violation notice if things aren't getting cleaned up voluntarily.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners?
A lot of regulations. People want them, they're really gonna have to do the work in order to do the upkeep and to maintain them. And I thank the city planner and the planning commission for doing their due diligence and constructing all of this and improving for what it is right now. So, thank you.
A question about inspecting. My assumption is the code compliance officers would be the people who would be responding to either complaints or compliance issues with the size of the buildings for the chickens?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Kirsten, would you address the covenants and what areas that would include?
Yeah, and my apologies, so Frank provided a very large stack of subdivision maps, and there are a lot of subdivisions that have restrictive covenants within their recorded at Miami County. Usually it's within the plat documents, and sometimes it's a separate document. Basically, most subdivisions that were platted post-1960, there's a restriction on keeping any kind of livestock. So those are enforced by HOAs or by your neighbors.
So that would be like Candlewood, Park Ridge, Eagles Nest, Deerfield,
Indian Ridge?
Indian Ridge.
Why aren't those listed in the document here?
I think I gave a short list. Arrowhead, Deerfield, Park Ridge, Eagles Nest, Candlewood, Landon Park, Indian Ridge, among others. There's many, many more. So what we're intending to do is continue to map those things. Subdivisions can be, there's hundreds of them. So they can be as big as like six lots at a time getting subdivided, or you can get them all on one plat and then it's easy. But what we're doing is digitizing those things. It's actually a really good exercise because now all the subdivision maps can, thank you chickens, the subdivision maps can be an easy lookup at this point. So piece by piece, we're working through the city. That's a pretty large project, as it turns out. So at the end of that, you'd be able to look up whether you have deed restrictions for livestock, but you'd be able to look up all your deed restrictions, all your plat information, which is good because currently you have to go to Miami County tax maps and kind of cross-reference and figure out to find a plat and then go request it from the county or search through huge books to get it. So that will be helpful. But for now, you're gonna kind of have to picture the kind of a donut shape of the city. Everything that expanded outward after 1960 and if it doesn't have alleys, you're most likely in that area of town.
Is there a way at the next meeting that we could have as inclusive of a list of where those are? Because I think what this means then, if for some reason we do pass this, if you live in one of those areas,
Wouldn't be able to.
you would not be able to have chickens. And if you did, you could, I mean, I don't know, would it be a misdemeanor? I don't know what would happen, but you would not be
Enforcement of
following
a-
the code.
Enforcement of a subdivision plat is a civil matter. They
Civil,
would file a
okay.
lawsuit and a restraining order against the person that would have the chickens and those plats. The owners or the HOA could do that, whichever.
What we would want that map to be for, though, we want people to understand, and this is sort of what we do with, hey, you can put your shed there, but you should be aware there's a utility easement. So, it's a risk. You're taking a risk. So that map would be fantastic, and we do this during permitting, because what a shame if you're coming to the government office and we're not telling you all the information you'd want to know about that thing before you invested in it. So it'll be helpful for us to serve that information, and they can self-serve that information, because you don't want to invest in something that's that risky, I
Right.
would presume.
So you can have a list by next meeting of all the subdivisions?
I can
that-
certainly have a list.
That
The
would be-
GIS map is going to take a little bit longer.
And that would be helpful. I know
Yeah,
up in my ward, a lot of these HOAs or whatever you want to call it do fall within my ward, and I know that there's other restrictions that people have not known about, like not having sheds or different things like that, and they have put a lot of money forward, and then they're visited by the HOA because they're not supposed to have the shed or that needs to be in a certain place. And I just, the sooner we can get that straightened out so our citizens really have an idea before they put money or where they're going to place those things, the better. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Speaking about manure, I think I'm concerned that on some occasions, the leftovers from the chickens, feathers included, might end up in our trash disposal process, subjecting our employees to other kinds of issues. Does the ordinance speak to that?
It says that you need to throw away the bedding and the manure and everything within a plastic bag. That's what it states. So I understand an enforcement of that, and
Is that a consistent process in other cities? Is that how it's done?
it's treated differently in different jurisdictions. Sometimes I don't think it's thoroughly addressed in other jurisdictions, but they will allow composting. Here, our lots are a lot smaller, so being able to get something pretty far away from other people is a little more difficult. Kind of depends. Some of the other jurisdictions I looked at, they're coming from it's a sustainable agriculture. Throw your food scraps away. Don't have to go buy, composted chicken manure at the store. Now you can make your own. Those are kind of the concepts that they're plugging into their code language. Again, if you're thinking most of our bigger lots are prohibited from having livestock due to their deed restrictions, and then our smaller lots in the city, it's preferable to get it off the lot, I think, for most people who've talked about it, rather than compost it on site. But that requires you using the trash system.
When I was a kid, we had a rabbit in the backyard, and it was a wonderful Easter gift for about 2 weeks after Easter. And I can remember shoveling the debris out from under the rabbit hutch. To be honest, I don't recall how my father dealt with it. The good news was I didn't, but that's an issue. Again, this ordinance speaks to rabbits as well as the changes are for chickens, but there is language for rabbits as well. And so I would be concerned about large amounts of animal manure that ends up in the trash stream. And that would be a question that I have, among others.
All right, any other questions or comments? Citizen, questions or comments?
Come.
Hi, my name is Paige Steeman. I live out on Madison Avenue. I had spoken at the Planning Commission, and it was something that I was wanting to address as well, because I think all those are really great things, but I also considered the time that we had before many of us knew that we weren't allowed to have chickens. They were in our backyard, and we did clean pretty frequently. But with the new restrictions with the runs and that kind of thing, I did address that it would probably be a good idea to allow the chickens to, if you've got a privacy fence and you can put up a barrier so the chickens are not coming closer than 30 feet to adjacent structure, you could get a chicken wire fence and allow the chickens to free range at least for some hours in the morning and early evenings. That would cut down on a lot of that, and you can pick it up and then you can spray it, so that way the manure fertilizes your yard, and it allows them to eat the fleas, the mosquitoes, the bugs. We didn't have any fleas until we got rid of our chickens, but I think if we allowed them to free range a couple, they're going to need to have some free range time. I think keeping them in an enclosure and in a run that small, that would compound smells and that kind of thing. I think they need some free range time, and I did voice those concerns. If we could include that, I think it would cut down on that. And I think if we needed to get rid of the manure or the trash, isn't there a place out on 25A that the compost can be taken to? Or we could take the compost from the bedding out of the coop to our local farmers or something for them to be able to reuse. That's something I think that we could possibly include in that if we need to get rid of the bedding. I'm sure there's lots of farmers that would love to have that. So that's just something I'd like to add, or something that we could possibly consider.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Yuri.
Yuri Koenig, 5 Peregrine Place. When the initiative started on backyard chickens, I did a lot of Google searches and wanted to see what's going on with backyard chickens. And unfortunately, there's a lot of literature. And I think the commission really should seriously consider whether they want to join these activities. There's a lot of literature about odor control. They have huge conferences, chicken odors. It's a major problem. And they're defining systems that you can measure it and objectively. We don't want to be involved with that. Why do we want to waste, noise, reduce property values? Does Piqua want to have Ohio State come in here and do a study on reduced property values for a home where they had no chickens before and now you have chickens? Let's find out what it really is. And then the main one is health concerns. The Centers for Disease Control, starting about 2 or 3 years ago, is starting to say, they're saying this is coming up as an issue. And so why should Piqua join in with the Center for Disease Control epidemiology studies? I mean, it's a choice you're making. I suggest we choose not to. 1,230 illnesses, 225 hospitalizations, and 2 deaths linked to backyard poultry in 2022. How many of those people is that going to happen here? Now, the salmonella is a bacteria on the chicken. We don't have it on people. It's on chickens. You get the bacteria, you bring it in your house, you're going to get sick, you may die. But the real concern is in our area, it's for a thing they used to call Ohio Valley fever. It's histoplasmosis. Before COVID, people died. It's more I think people in the construction industry are more familiar with it. But if untreated, it's usually fatal. If you get it, histoplasmosis, it's, fungal spores that comes from chicken droppings. If you get it, they can treat it. You might live that year. The next year, you're going to get flu. You're probably going to die. But the citizen most at risk to the histoplasmosis is, children under 2 and adults age 55 and older. I mean, this is kind of like the COVID thing. And the only way to prevent these health risks is not have backyard chickens in the city of Piqua. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Wilson, 211 West Green. The biggest thing I have a problem with is the health issues with this whole deal. And if you vote against it or for it, you have to be sure that this doesn't threaten the general health, safety, and welfare of the community. Now, in my opinion, it does. I'll give you several reasons why. The diseases that Gary was talking about, the Salmonella and the E. coli, is from the bird droppings that if you're in the coop cleaning, picking up eggs, whatever it may be, it can transfer on you very easily onto your clothing. And if you bring that in and ingest it due to transfer, then that's how you get that disease, very easy to get. As far as the histoplasmosis, that's the spore coming from the droppings. And that can give you flu-like symptoms. It can affect your lungs, and it can affect your eyes. In fact, I have it. It affected my eye, my left eye. I have no direct vision in my left eye from that. And I think I got it as a child living across from Echo Lake. I lived across from Echo Lake till I was 8 years old. At the time, I didn't know I had it. Later in my, 40s, I started getting blurred vision. Went to the doctor, and they told me that's what I had. So I had to get laser surgery, loss of vision in my eye. They put a big needle in your eye prior to all the lights. It's not a lot of fun. So it's common near water areas where birds are. So I think I got it from Echo Lake. There's no way of really knowing. So that's a real concern. Another problem is I looked at some of the literature on the internet, and they were calling the chickens poop tornadoes. So with all that generated daily, hourly, it smells, it attracts flies, it's hard to get rid of. When you go to clean, you're exposing yourself to these spores, other things, so it's a never-ending battle. And if you look at the people who don't take care of their dogs, all the violations you get on dog feces in the yards, you get them every month or two, you're just going to get a lot more from the chickens, I believe. Another problem is predators. If you have chickens in your backyard, you're going to attract predators. The predators for the chickens would be things like possum, raccoons, dogs, cats, coyotes, and hawks. And if there's a hole in any of the enclosure or any of the screen, they're going to get in. And as far as the chicken feed itself, that's going to attract mice and rats. My niece in Cincinnati had backyard chickens last year. The rats dug a tunnel underneath the coop, got into the coop to get to the seed, or the chicken feed. So she has young children, so she immediately got rid of her chickens because she has children to deal with. So I just think it sounds nice when you first hear about having chickens in the yard, but dealing with all the effects and the aftermath of all that kind of scares me. So I would, in my opinion, it would be a health issue that we should not start. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Pam Hawes, and I live on Cleveland Street, and I would love to see the chickens. I would love to see people be able to have the backyard chickens. When I lived out in the country for 10 years, I had chickens, and As far as the smell, I've not smelled any worse than when you've got the farmers spraying the manure in the fields all the way around Piqua, and you can smell it all during Piqua. The smell can be bad during the rainy season, but then the sewers are a bad smell during the rainy season. Most people that invest their money into having the chickens and building the coop and everything do their best to try to avoid extra problems. And in the 10 years I had the chickens and never had a mouse problem or a rat problem, I must admit I did have some barn cats, but you got plenty of alley cats all through the city that seem to keep the mice and the moles out of the yards anyways. With that fact, and most people that have chickens know you've got to store their feed in metal trash cans anyways, to prevent, and I never had a problem with any of those other things. I must admit, raccoons were a big issue. I don't see raccoons in my city yard right now, but groundhogs are sure a problem, tearing up me and my neighbors' gardens. And don't know how that affects it, but the thing is, let people have grow their own food. It's just like I have a garden every year. My neighbors have a garden every year. And then to have the children, it's just like responsibility with dogs and cats and chickens. I've never seen people have problems that you're bringing up, and I know that, it's just like the man with the cases from the CDC. I don't know whether that's the state of Ohio or nationwide, but you're going to have problems with anything that we do. But I just don't see how having some backyard chickens, and then by the regulations she was saying, I don't even know if I'll qualify, but I would like to see if people can, they can have them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thomas Homan, 1803 Nicklin Avenue. The concern about the bird waste and all the possible diseases, they'll kill you, from what we've heard. I guess the question would be is, why are we even talking about chickens? We have all these geese all over the place. Should we be culling the geese because of the droppings that they have and all the potential diseases they're carrying? Maybe we shouldn't even stop there. Maybe we should go cull all the birds as well, and maybe get after some of those cats that are wandering around too. But it seems to me that there's a lot of risks out there, and it's just kind of part and parcel of being a human, unfortunately. I don't think that we need to be super concerned. I do think that we need to have appropriate concern about risks of diseases, but that's a risk that's going to be carried with all kinds of different things. I don't know that the chickens bring any particularly special disease concerns that are not already present in the community. So just caution against alarmism.
My understanding is that the Canadian geese are protected.
They are. They are.
And so we're in a situation where we don't have much say over Canadian geese and the green droppings, but
they are a menace.
They are.
And I work in a place where we have to clean up, and so I appreciate that. But they are, I believe, protected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think it was a good first reading.
So we will review that again on April 4th.
Yep.
It's time to move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the City Commission regarding agenda items, issues, or to provide information. Comments are requested to be limited to 5 minutes, and specific questions should be addressed to the city manager's office. So, public comment.
Wilson, 211 West Green. On Monday, March 27th, which is next Monday, at the YWCA, 6 p.m., we're going to be having an information center on the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program, which is part of the PNIC Association. We're going to talk about our plans for this coming year. We're going to talk about what we've done in the past, what we hope to do in the future. We want anyone who has an interest to come down, whether they're a volunteer, a potential volunteer, if you want to be a potential donor, if you want to have a group that might want to help us paint and do yard work for people in need. That's what we do. So anyone who has any kind of interest or any questions, please come down. We'll be at the Y, and we'll have some literature to pass out. So please come if you have any interest at all. If you've never heard of it, we'll take your name and we'll call you to help us paint. So again, the work we do has no cost to the owner of the property, and typically there are people who can't afford to do the work themselves. So we're helping people in need, and we could use the help to do the work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
Joe,
what you do,
thank
Joe.
you. And you said the YWCA?
By
Okay,
WCA,
great.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Monday, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments?
Danielle Dryling, 1038 Nicklin. So a couple weeks ago, Gill Street and Walker were closed down for some work that was being done on the manhole. I'm signed up for all of the notifications for streets being closed. It was closed for 5 days. We had no notifications from the city, no signs saying that you couldn't park there, no door hanger saying, hey, heads up, this is gonna happen. I just kinda wanted to check in. What's the actual procedure for letting you know that a street's gonna be closed down, especially when it's like 5 days worth of being closed? And just kind of asking people to do better in notifications.
Yeah, so I'll look into that for you as well, but typically they do door hangers and also street closure reports. Then maybe just that particular job fell through the cracks, but I'll find out for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, city manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As a follow-up to the consent agenda, I just wanted to let the public know that the boards and committees that are still have open positions would be the one on the Park Board, one on the Miami County Board of Health, and also one on the Utility Board. So those are open, and the online city application can be found on our website, so please, if you're interested, apply. Along with that, it's my biweekly commercial for you to sign up for Smart Hub as well as Piqua Alerts, and we will do better to make sure the information is accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioners' comments? Commissioner Lee?
I'd like to thank everybody who came up and spoke about backyard chickens. I can tell you that I personally will not have chickens in my yard because my wife is the boss. I respect what she says, but there are plenty of people that aren't in restrictive covenants that are interested in them. I'd like to see them get the opportunity to have that chance, and that's why in any town, when people have a desire and debate is called to discuss an issue, you're going to hear both sides. And tonight we heard both sides. I very much respect both sides of the issue, and I like to hear people talk about it. And I think it's great. You know, I mean that's what this is about. And Mr. Blackshire, I like what you had to say as well. And reach out. We've only had one reading on this. Before it gets any further, reach out and discuss this further and see if there's anything else that can be done. It is getting warmer. Has anybody been to BK yet? If not, get out there. Great place. Love that place. Keep visiting downtown Piqua. It seems to be growing quite by the leaps and bounds. And we get some new businesses there, and we want you to, all the citizens to participate and partake. And you guys know the warmer it gets, the more people get outside. So be careful driving and watching pedestrians, bicycles, motorcycles that are out there. And just be kind. I think that was one of your things. Be kind to each other. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Vetter.
Thank you. At one of our discussions, we had some questions about utility costs. and different approaches to utilities. My suggestion is for people who may have concern for not only electric, but water, sewer, a good place to have those discussions and to learn more is to attend a meeting. The Electric Utility Board has monthly meetings, and the Utility Board has, I think, quarterly meetings, and I think you can learn a lot from that. I'm of the opinion that we are in a good position for our utilities. Nobody's real happy about water at this point, but I think that in some time, we will come to the middle of the group, not be leading the cost place, but that'll take a little bit of time. So please feel free to attend those meetings. Those meetings are all public, and you can learn a lot about the value of utility systems and how they work for the average citizen. I wanted to say that I visited a local grocery, which I will not name, but I bought a dozen eggs for $1.99. And it appears to me that the discussion over eggs really reached its peak when eggs were in the $5 range per dozen. And I think now that we are getting some activity on avian flu and some other things, I think that the price of eggs is coming down, and so again, I'm thankful for that, and I think that needs to be added to the discussion. The other thing that I have done recently, and I'll continue to do for a little while, is I have what I call Vetter's Good Rules for Good Citizens. This is Volume 1. Chapter 1 was Be Kind. Thank you. The other was Be Helpful. We want good citizens to be helpful. We want good citizens to be perseverant. And that's what tonight is all about. It's coming out and stating your opinion and being perseverant. We want citizens to be vigilant. And I think that's a good quality. Last commission meeting, I talked about the fact that citizens need to be truthful. You don't have to be a police officer very long to discover that not everybody is truthful. That's an issue, and I would certainly encourage good citizens to be truthful. Tonight's current chapter review is that we want citizens to be courteous. And I think that when somebody cuts you off in traffic, it's not always good to be courteous, but I think that it means that it's a skill that we learned. My wife and I were recently cleaning out an attic and going over some old books, and I found my old Boy Scout handbook from about 1955, and there were a number of things in that I learned, and I think I still practice today on most occasions, and so I say add be courteous to your list of good citizens' qualities. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Hines.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pearson. Hard to believe spring is here as of Monday, and we have had a little warmer weather. We've had some sunshine, and then, of course, it got cold again. But that means that people are going to be out more. As Commissioner Lee said, be aware that people are going to be on bikes more and just pay attention. Also, reach out and help your neighbors as they might be trying to do some cleanup in their yards and different things like that as we get ready for the spring flowers and things such as that. I also want to remind people that the high school is having their musical this year. It's Mamma Mia, and it's Friday and Saturday night at the Performance Center at the high school. And if you haven't gotten tickets, you can go on to the city school website and click on the ticket tab there and get tickets for it. I've heard really wonderful things about it, so if you want to get entertained, you have a possibility on Friday night. Also, this Thursday, Parents as Teachers is holding their annual quarter auction, and I believe it's either at the Knights of Columbus or I think that's where it is. I think it's the Knights of Columbus. So again, that's another great organization that supports our children here in the community. And the last thing I have to ask is I will not be here at the next City Commission meeting, so I'd like to be excused. It's my spring break. I work at Piqua Junior High, and my son, I'm bringing his car out to Oregon. Again, I wish he did not go to school so far away, but that's where he chose to go, so I will be driving. But as I have done before, I will check into the meeting and just see what's going on. So thank you.
Safe travels. Let's see, we were awarded the Arbor Day Foundation Award for Piqua as a 2022 Tree City, USA. So Piqua was named a 2022 Tree City, USA by the Arbor Day Foundation to honor our commitment to effective urban forest management. And that program required 4 items: maintaining a tree board or department, having a tree care ordinance, dedicating an annual community forestry budget, and hosting an Arbor Day observance and proclamation. And Tree City USA program is sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters. So this will be put on our website, and congratulations, Piqua. I don't have anything else.
I think Arbor Day has been scheduled, and I think Mr. Grazier sent out an email
He
to
did.
several of us, inviting us to the Arbor Day celebration.
Cool.
It's coming up.
Good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.